And we are back, Sam and Joe, with the proper MMA podcast on this Friday afternoon. Looking ahead to the fights this weekend, we're off to Saudi Arabia for the UFC. Israel Adesanya in his first non-title fight in about 12 fights. Joe against Nassourdine Imavov. We'll talk some other bits of MMA news as well. We've had this interesting story with Bryce Mitchell over the last 24 hours and a couple of other bits as well. But we thought we'd come on. Not going to do a draft this week, but we'll chuck in a few of our thoughts and best bets on some of the fights this weekend. But first, Joe, you good?
Yeah, good. Like you said, an interesting fight night with few of the changed fights. So we didn't quite get a winner, did we? Because of the change up. So, but I thought it was interesting. Yeah, good. Like you said, I think this weekend's going to be exciting. I've got a few bets ready, so yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. We'll talk about this this new stuff first. And Bryce Mitchell, I didn't even know about this stuff until I saw the clip last night of Dana White coming out and reading a statement about what he'd said, going in through all the stuff that he'd said. We won't play it necessarily, but obviously if you I presume everyone has heard the news. Bryce Mitchell on his new podcast coming out with stuff such as Hitler is a good guy and all this kind of stuff, and going into some of the reasons behind it. But I just wanted to just discuss it a little bit and maybe just look at the UFC's response to it. First of all, your thoughts as someone, as if people don't know, you kind of look after quite a few athletes in a different sport, a team sport. But in terms of the UFC's response and what Bryce Mitchell has done, what have you made of it?
Well, obviously, what Bryce Mitchell said, obviously, just again, what Dana said it, I think, quite well. Just stupid, dumb, just all the things that you just don't want to hear from a UFC fighter. That has a bit of a cult following for some radical views, but he's gone crazy over the line. But UFC has had very mixed. He said they've had very mixed reviews on things. Dana's very free speech, so people have come out with anything. People have think Dana's always said, no, they're paid to fight. That's it. I don't get involved. They're allowed to say whatever they want to say. It doesn't reflect the UFC. It doesn't reflect my thoughts. It's a very American First Amendment right way of looking at things. But yeah, in terms of the European landscape, in terms of most other parts of the world, it's you'd be automatically fired for his words, wouldn't you? For his views, you'd just be gone. So yeah, it's interesting how UFC handle this. Dana's said, yeah, don't like Bryce, don't agree with anything he said, but it's free speech. So I don't know. It's an interesting conversation on that front. Should you be allowed to say anything? Are you allowed to have any view and not be judged and not be reprimanded? Obviously, in the UK, you'd be just not even allowed. Obviously, you may be even imprisoned if you said it in certain ranks in certain areas. Bryce is allowed to say it. UFC is allowing him to say it and just calling him dumb. But obviously, with his cult following, with him being around the UFC, I don't know. It's a tough one, isn't it? It's a tough one. Very American stance on it, but I don't quite agree. I think there needs to be a line.
Yeah, let's just hear a little bit of Dana White. Not from the statement, but just afterwards, Oscar Willis of the Mike Life asked a couple of questions. It's quite interesting the way he kind of went into it.
It's obviously not a fun topic to talk about, the Bryce stuff. I think that's a great statement that you just gave. Does Bryce Mitchell face a punishment from the UFC for saying
that's what everybody wants to hear about punishments? Free speech. I don't have to love it. You don't have to love it. You know.
I agree with that. The free speech sentiment. Is there a concern though, right? If he goes out and wins a fight and gets a mic.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about this business. For all of you that hate Bryce Mitchell, you get to see him hopefully get his ass whooped on global television. I mean, what do you want me to say about it? Right. You know where I am with free speech. We're disgusted by it. I think he's probably one of the dumbest, literally one of the dumbest human beings. Let's not forget that this is a guy who took a drill through his nutsack, then had to reverse it and put the drill back out of his. That's the level of stupid that we're talking about here. And I could probably go on for 10 minutes talking about how dumb Bryce Mitchell is. But guess what? Bryce Mitchell has a podcast.
I believe this was episode 1.
What a way to start.
We'll leave it there with Dana's kind of response to it. But during that same press conference, that after the power slam stuff, and he's going into Bryce's podcast there, and actually just before we talk about that, I was trying to find that bit within the Bryce podcast. I've seen the clip, but I wanted to actually find it myself, so I was kind of flicking through and listening to different bits, and some of the stuff, I mean, that's the bit that's been picked up, but there is some insane stuff that he is coming out with. And at one point he's diminishing everything from like the dinosaurs, and obviously he's a flat earther as well. And pretty much he goes in and he's saying that everything is bullshit and indoctrination. And then he goes, but if you don't believe in the Bible, then you're stupid, basically, which I thought was quite funny. But yeah, in terms of Dana's response, he was talking about later when he's asked about the GFL, saying that they're not, he doesn't see them or the PFL as any kind of competition. What he sees as competition is the NBA, is the NFL, is Saturday night movies. And as you said before, if this was a top NBA star, top NFL star, would they survive this kind of scandal? So I think it's interesting that Dana goes down this free speech line, but then he sees his competition as these organizations, which you would imagine in this kind of circumstance would clean house and not have that individual playing for their side, or if it's a movie star, they'd be axed, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely interesting. But I think Dana's leadership and his views on that sort of stuff, I think that's why he's made him so successful and so well liked. He rarely changes. He rarely thinks. He's said himself there. It's dumb. He doesn't agree with anything he said. He can't. The thing is, he's one of the dumbest individuals. He give a beautiful example for the viewers to understand how dumb Bryce Mitchell is. So I think that's what makes Dana special as a business owner, that he doesn't relent on his views, whether you like them or not. But I don't know. Maybe there needs to be certain circumstances where that's where he can change the rules, and there isn't such a strict boundary on his free speech laws. I don't know. It's an interesting one, and I think one that's going to get continued in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely interesting, and one to watch as well, to see if anything does happen. Obviously, with the UFC's ownership, and talking about Hitler and his views on Jews, etc., and obviously the owner of UFC now, Endeavor, with Ari Emanuel, a Jewish businessman. So it will be interesting to see where this goes. And I think the always thing with the UFC is, where is the line? Where would the line be? And I think this is really pushing that line now. So we'll see how that plays out. Another interesting story this week has been the kind of Paul Hughes, Umar Nurmagomedov won the fight, which was fantastic. To the reaction to the fight and the clamor for the potential rematch, but then also the kind of Conor McGregor angle that came in later in the week, where the clip was released of Paul Hughes chatting to Khabib in the cage afterwards, saying he's not like that other guy and stuff, and McGregor's response. What have you made to this whole Paul Hughes situation? Another kind of interesting one this week, a little bit political, or a lot political with Conor McGregor's response, but certainly political in terms of MMA with the island Dagestan kind of rivalry that stemmed from Conor and Khabib.
Well, I think it was Paul's attempt at trying to make it not a daft rivalry. Obviously, it's not. If you ignore Khabib and Conor's relationship, it's not a rivalry, is it? There's not loads of things, but because of the two countries went at it, because of Khabib and Conor. So I think it was Paul Hughes trying to diffuse a bit of that, bit of the fandom. I think he had a lot of hate going into it, obviously both ways. Probably just trying to build a bridge there, and obviously Conor's gone. No, there's no building bridges here, son. You're on one team with the other, and that's the way Conor's gone about it. Then burnt bridges with Paul after Paul's asked him to train. So nothing surprising there. Typical Conor McGregor nowadays. Sadly, I'm one of his biggest fans of all time. I had big posts. I was a typical fanboy of his, but he's just lost his way, and it's typical McGregor. Being daft, being outlandish, and being way too strong on his views. Paul Hughes, I think everyone should go watch him. Go watch the fight if you've not watched it. The highlights are online. Just go watch it. He's a brilliant fighter. He had a great fight against Khabib's cousin, and a great storyline for the fighters. There've been loads of hype. They've been hyped. They've been talked about. I think it can only result in good stuff for them. Again, another small scratch on McGregor's building bad legacy over the last couple of years.
Yeah, like you said, a big win for the PFL putting on that fight, which was fantastic. And I think they have actually released the full fight this afternoon on the PFL YouTube channel. So one to watch on your Friday night ahead of the fights this weekend. We ain't got too much time, so let's crack into some of the fights. In fact, first, before we do, just on McGregor, obviously the BKFC last weekend and Jeremy Stephens with the win over Eddie Alvarez. McGregor saying he's going to fight Jeremy Stephens in bare knuckle. Probably not going to happen, like most of the McGregor fights that doesn't happen. But on the whole BKFC thing and its growth, potentially will get Jeremy Stephens against Mike Perry. It's kind of got this MMA leading the charge in terms of BKFC and some of its biggest stars. But are you kind of moving more into watching it, and what have you made of that whole little triangle from the weekend?
Like you said, I like it. I can't say I've tuned in massively to it all, but it's one where I'll watch the highlights, keep up with the news. If the fight's on and I'm around, I'll watch them. I think it's brutal. It's everything you like as a sports fan. Not everything, because it didn't have the arts part of it. I won't call it a martial art, because it's definitely not as much artistry, more just brute force, brutality. So if you're into that sort of thing, it's brilliant in it. And I think if you did see Conor McGregor in it, I think that would break a lot of records. To be fair, it's one, but I'd definitely be signing up. I'd buy the pay-per-view. I'd watch Conor McGregor and Jeremy Stephens go at it. Like you said, a bit of storyline from back in the day. Who are you? Well, Conor knows who he is now, and it's setting up. Like you said, the chances are he's not going to do it, but it would set up the greatest bare knuckle fight of all time. Jeremy Stephens is absolute animal, and McGregor, like you said, McGregor were known for his stand-up, known for his knockout punch, his left hand. So would that translate to bare knuckle? I don't know, but if it does, be one hell of a pay-per-view. I'd be buying that one, Sam, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I've seen a few people this week. Last thing on this before we move into the fights is the interest. Are people now going more? Are you more interested in seeing McGregor just fighting in BKFC rather than his UFC return? If they made Stephens versus McGregor in BKFC, or say Chandler against McGregor in the UFC later in the year, which is the more interesting?
Me bare knuckle. I'd sign up for the bare knuckle quicker than I would the UFC one. We know he's not going to be champion now, in my opinion. We know he's had his reign there. I think he's made history. I don't want to keep seeing McGregor's legacy get tainted. He was one of the legend. He is probably the biggest legend of the sport in terms of what he did, how he attracted fans, how he revolutionised marketing, for bad or worse, for better or worse. Sorry, but that unique bare knuckle brutality, watching McGregor go at it. He's done a bit of boxing. I think that is box office, to be fair. If they wanted to break the record, I think it'd be more in the bare knuckle side of it than watching him and Chandler go at it for sadly no reason whatsoever. Because I think the bare knuckle's more about who can be more brutal, who can put on a great show. It's not as much the title, where UFC, it's the gold standard. You want to know who is the best. They're fighting to be the best, and they're fighting each other to prove they're the best. And no, we're not. We know McGregor's not the best anymore. We know Chandler's not the best anymore. Get him in that bare knuckle and just watch him go to war. For me, watch him go to war.
Nice. It is interesting. I would maybe lean more towards the the bare knuckle stuff. But something for the future, one to watch. Perhaps the fights this weekend, though, we will be watching on UK time, nice and early for us. I think it's about 7:00 main card. 5:00 for your prelims over in Saudi Arabia. It is Israel Adesanya against Nassourdine Imavov. Adesanya in his first non-title fight in something like 12 fights, I think it is, since 2019. The first time he has not competed in championship class, whether as a challenger or the champion at middleweight. And of course, his one fight up at light heavyweight. As well against the surgeon Imavov, who had a good 2024. Joe, have you got the main event here? We'll just touch on the top three fights and chuck in a couple of bets maybe elsewhere.
Yeah, I think top three fights. Well, there's a few that I find very interesting. There's four. I think whenever you see a Nurmagomedov, oh my, good attempt at that. I got it right early. Nurmagomedov's name about Saeed's fighting this one against Meniscus Oliveira. I think that's always interesting. I think to be fair because of what Khabib's built and now what his family members are building from there. Yeah, but the main event, I've got Israel Adesanya winning this one. Imavov looks very, very good, in great shape. If you watch the weigh-offs, he looks in best shape he's ever been. I'm going to trust Israel's still got it. I think he is a champion. He's obviously earned the championship back, 2-time middleweight champion now. So I think he can do it, and I think he wants one or two more fights at the top before he starts that descent down. What have you got, Sam?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm with Izzy as well. I think I like him evolve, but I'm not convinced he's just there yet in terms of like the top three. Obviously, happy to be proven wrong at the weekend. But yeah, I've just got Izzy. I think obviously he's fought the best of the best. He's been in these huge contests. You know, the one against Dricus was high pressured as well, coming back after losing against Strickland. But obviously the rivalry they had there with the whole Africa thing. So he's just been in high pressure fights. Obviously the Pereira double-header that we had as well, massive pressure, and I think he just had that implosion, didn't he, Adesanya, into that Strickland fight. It was too soon taking that fight. Great performance from Strickland on the night, well worthy of the win. And you know, against Dricus, he came up against someone with that just raw, wild style. The insane cardio that he kind of brings, Dricus, and the pace that he brings. Imavov, I don't think he's going to bring that. He's very measured, likes to get in those, has nice stand up, can grapple well in the clinch. But I think Izzy's kind of been there and seen all this before. And I'm not sure that Imavov just has that edge to take out someone like Adesanya just yet. The performance against Dricus was much better. He landed some great shots in that. Dricus showed he's got a great chin. His takedown defense, stood up pretty well as well in that fight. So Adesanya, he's got a 5-inch reach advantage here as well, which I think will be important for him with the way that Izzy's going to approach this fight. So I'm going Adesanya. And my bet for the fight that I've had this week is Adesanya and over 3.5 rounds, which comes in on the good side, 57 to 50. That one over at BetMGM. So I'm having Adesanya over 3.5 rounds. Cagey chess match early on, and Adesanya to take this one. Have you got a bet for us?
On that one, no, not as much. No, I've got two coming up, so I'll get it. The next one is the Shara Magomedov versus Michael Venom Page fight. This one's an interesting one in my view. Sam, Shara's got the kicks, he's got the distance. I'd say Michael has probably got the better stand up. Both don't have great ground games, but all the things you're getting on YouTube, on the social medias, is Shara working on his ground. Obviously, that's the way to beat Michael Page. Without saying it's easy, because it's never easy to beat a professional fighter, but that's the way. His ground game's not good at all. I can say that pretty confidently. Stand up amazing. Saw it against Ian Gary, where Ian Gary completely turned into a different fighter. So I think this one's the fun one for me. I think this one's going to a decision. I know that's a boring bet, but I've got Shara versus Michael Page a decision. They're both counter strikers, both looking for someone to be the one to dive in and be the aggressor. And I think traditionally we watch fighters like this go at it, and it rarely turns into a humdinger. Very rarely turns into a really exciting fight. Everyone builds them up. It's Michael Venom Page. It's Shara. I don't think the matchup's brilliant for a big fight. I think it's going to be quite slow, quite chess matchy. Maybe it does have little moments where it does kick off and they get a few great exchanges as they're both great fighters. But I think Shara is probably going to try take him down here, try slow it down, kick from the outside. Don't let Michael Venom Page do his surging, jumping strikes. And I've got it to go to decision. I know that's boring. I know it's a bit of a controversial one with them both being such good stand-up. But Shara Magomedov, Michael Page decision for me, Sam.
Yeah, I've got over 2.5 rounds, just so the potential for that late finish if someone's really chasing it. And I think MVP's grappling has improved, but like I say, there is the potential here that maybe Shara's going to show that side of his game, which he hasn't done yet in the UFC. I do agree. Yeah, it could potentially be one of those, again, the kind of chess match angle to it, high level chess, where both guys have got the skills. In the stand up, that Shara's knockout last time out of Petrosian with the double spinning back fist was fantastic. Obviously, we've seen in Bellator MVP and glimpses in the UFC of what MVP is all about. So yeah, like you said, there will be moments where the flashes come, but I imagine it'll be quite slow. And if you look at some of the stats, I was looking at Page's stats in the UFC so far, and his significant strike output is low, 2.38 per minute, 1.45 absorb, which shows he does fight well with his defense as well. He has been pretty defensive in the UFC so far. Magomedov is much higher, but I think we can caveat that a little bit with the fact that when he fought like the Tricoli in the second fight, it had come in last minute. It was a bit of a punching bag, so I think his stats are kind of off a little bit. I don't think he's going to come in and be the wild man against someone like MVP. So I think you're right there. It's going to be a bit of a chess match, and I'm going over 2.5 rounds, 4-11 in my treble, and I think there is that potential late finish potentially. But I think those first two rounds are going to be cagey, and it's going to be down to that final round over who takes this one. And then obviously the next one down, a big heavyweight boys, Pavlovich on a 2-fight skid. Obviously lost to Volkov last time out. The all Russian clash, which I think was in Saudi Arabia as well. And then before that, obviously lost to Aspinall for the interim title up against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's on a 2-fight win streak for the first time in a long time. He beat Tai Tuivasa last time out by a split decision, which wasn't a split decision, but Rozenstruik won that one. And then he had another win before that as well. I've not quite got my stats up on the screen, but Rozenstruik on a 2-fight win shot. Oh, it's Gassiev, wasn't it? Retired in the fourth early in 2024. I think it was March, that fight in the fourth round, a main event at the Apex, I think. An interesting fight, this one, and one really where Pavlovich, if he wants to be back in that elite mix, has to get past Rozenstruik. But can he do it, Joe?
I think there's a big difference in standard here, Sam. And I say yes, I think he does do this pretty comfortably. I've got Pavlovich by knockout. I'd be very shocked if he pulls this off. Rozenstruik, yes, he's beat two, but two that I'm not too impressed with. I think Rozenstruik, you know what he is. I just can't see him beating Pavlovich in the stand-up for speed, athleticism. The only thing that worries me about Pavlovich, he looked a bit gun-shy against Volkov. He looked a bit more nervous, like his thing, obviously, after getting knocked out against Aspinall. But I think he's going to go for it. He's got to get the knockout here. He's got to make the statement. So unless there's a big mental block, I think there's a big standard in difference in athleticism, in speed, in power. And for me, Rozenstruik wins all three of them, Pavlovich wins all three of them. So unless Rozenstruik has a bit of a ground game or can get him on the outside in length, I don't think that's happening. And I think Pavlovich TKO Sam as my final bet for all the viewers.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you on that. Pavlovich all day long. I think when you look at Rozenstruik and when he has stepped up in class, and Garn, Blades, Volkov, Almeida, 4 of those are in the top kind of 6 if you exclude John Jones, the champion. He's lost them all. And he has wins against some of the lesser fighters in the division. So I think Pavlovich has got the power. I was interested to see the way I've not actually seen it. I saw an Instagram picture of Pavlovich and he looked a little bit leaner. I wonder if he has been working on the cardio side of his game, because like you said, against Volkov, he did kind of gas out after the first round, which potentially understandable because all of his fights, I think, in the UFC have ended in the first round. I've gone under 1.5 rounds. Sergei Pavlovich to win 13-20. Potential Rozenstruik gets through that first round, but that's my bet for this fight, and putting them all together. Adesanya over 3.5 rounds, over 2.5 rounds for Shower and MVP, and Pavlovich under 1.5 rounds gives us 19 to 5, so just under 5-1 or 4-1 for your bet there, for your treble for this UFC fight night.
Yeah, I've got one. Yeah, very similar. Like I said, just a bit, I'd say a little bit safer. I've got Magomedov by decision, Pavlovich by KO, and obviously, as we said, Adesanya to win and over 2.5 rounds in that fight. I'd say go chuck it in a treble. You've got that one, and then you can just put 4 fights on. Chuck Saeed, Nurmagomedov to beat Vinicius Oliveira. You've got Pavlovich, Michael Page, Adesanya in a nice 4-fold there. Put a 5er on, you'll get enough money back to pay for a couple of rounds of your Guinness watching the fights. Nice,
and yeah, you can enjoy your Guinness with this main card on the UK time zone as well. Now Joe will be knee deep, a couple of prelims at 5 o'clock. He'll be getting himself ready to go. Joe, conscious of time, we'll be back next week with another draft show for the big pay-per-view in Australia next weekend. I say big pay-per-view, it's not that big, is it? The card isn't the best, but we'll try and get a draft out of that if we can. But Joe, thanks very much and enjoy the fights this weekend.
Thank you. You too, Sam.